All right. Welcome everybody. Welcome to Wednesday and to Sarah and I discussing teen hormones. This is a fun one today. So a little bit about me. My name is Ashlie. I'm the founder and CEO of Aeryon Wellness. I'm a certified holistic nutritionalist, an ISSA trainer, eating disorder recovery coach, and recently just finished my cognitive behavioral therapist practitioner course. 2020, 2021, I was about a top 100 health and wellness influencer. I have a #1 book on Amazon called Believe Me to Balance. My daughter and I have done 4 fast-paced mom cookbooks, and I hosted a wellness radio segment for a number of years. And really my brand, I have the brand called Aeryon Wellness, and it really kind of stems from my own personal issues with bulimia. I had a struggle for about 25 years with eating disorders, and then also competing, throwing that in there on top of it. And then I kind of had my aha moment about over 10 years ago. And I really decided that I was going to make a change in my life and start to look at health and wellness from a more holistic point of view, because for so long, I really kind of viewed it as more how healthy I was how I looked on the outside. I think that's where Sarah and I really kind of gel and get along on that, obviously on other things too, but on that definite belief in that. So that's when I started Aeryon Wellness. And I'm really excited to share with you some of the stuff we've been working on here tonight. And now it is Sarah's turn.
My name is Sarah. My partner and I own Embodied Wellness Co., which is a female-focused health coaching company, and our hashtag is Making Women Healthy Again. I'm a functional nutritionist. I have lots, I think almost 10 certifications in nutrition and just overall holistic health. And I've been studying the human body, Chinese medicine, traditional medicine, science-based practices for almost 10 years now, which is a long time. Pretty crazy considering I'm still considering myself very young. And our whole practice is framed around helping make women healthy and teaching and educating women on how to take care of their body, because this webinar is really close to my heart, because one of our main missions is to get the word out to younger audiences. It's one thing to work with women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and fix some of these problems that have come up, but it's another thing to educate teenagers or parents to help educate their teenagers so they can start to take care of their body and know what that means at a young age. And they don't have to grow up having the same issues that we often all have nowadays too. So really stoked about this one.
Yeah, I agree. So we're going to go over the 5 pillars. This is the 5 pillars of Aeryon Wellness, but I know Sarah is right on board with this one too, because, you know, true health and wellness is not just taking supplements. It's not just the food you eat, but it really is these components. And they're really important, not only for us as adults, but also if we can teach our children these 5 fundamental points of holistic health. And they really are the thoughts you think, the friends you keep, that support group, movement, the foods you eat, and supplementation. We're going to be really kind of revolving today's talk and using these 5 pillars to really kind of give you tips and tools and strategies to support your teen. And I think you're going to get some nuggets in there for yourself where you're going to kind of go, I should be doing that for myself too.
So we're going to go through different topics of discussion. So we'll talk about what puberty is and kind of the stage of getting, or the changes happening in someone's body to getting your period. We'll talk about some of the common symptoms that we often see in teenagers of hormone imbalances. And then we'll go through 7 different ways to support teen hormones. So let's talk about puberty. Puberty is a sequence of events. So it's not just this one defining moment where all of a sudden everything is different, although sometimes it could feel like that. So it's actually a sequence of events that happens, and it results in physical changes that give the teenager adult-like characteristics. So we have different fluctuations of hormones. LH is luteinizing hormone and FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. And these are really important in having a menstrual cycle, so they can help with growing and releasing an egg and having ovulation, which really is the main event of a menstrual cycle. So as these start to increase in a teenager, this helps with the production of sex hormones, so estrogen and progesterone. And these changes, or these increases in the hormones, can lead to physical changes, and then eventually it would lead to menstruation. So this chart here just shows average age that they're seeing breast development and pubic hair development. And this is the data for girls only, and this was taken in 450 girls. So many start to experience it around the age of 11, but it is actually becoming earlier and earlier. We are seeing earlier puberty taking place, largely due to the increase in estrogens in our environment and our diet, right? Because as we mentioned, the increase in hormones causes or is one of the contributing factors to the beginning of these changes. And now we have so many hormones in our environment and even through our nutrition and our diet that it's really affecting women at a young age. So it's important to take into context, like not only what's going on inside of your teen, but also diet and what they're exposed to, and understanding how that could play a role in puberty and their symptoms.
Yeah, like skincare stuff, makeup, perfumes, all of those things are all really important to be looking at as well. So changes, changes, physical changes that come before menstruation. The body's really learning to adjust to this upswing of hormones, as Sarah had mentioned. So we have these higher levels of estrogen, and they don't have the adequate amount of progesterone that's actually needed for an ovulatory cycle. So this can lead to some different symptoms, such as mood swings. I have a 13-year-old myself, so I'm experiencing that. Acne, water retention, headaches, and anxiety as well. So if you look at the chart here on the left, it shows kind of the body changes that end up happening, as she spoke about kind of in the last slide, right? So the best breast development starts 2 to 3 years before the girl gets her period. Pubic and armpit hair 2 to 5 years before. Acne 1 to 2. Body odor. It's funny when Michaela has all her friends over, I'm just like, oh my gosh, because some of them just aren't. And it's so interesting how they're just not aware of it. Michaela's very aware of like deodorant. And but yeah, some of the kids, I'm like, whoa. So and then of course cervical mucus as well from 6 to 12 months before.
So this is really important to talk about, is the first 5 to 7 years once a woman gets her period or starts experiencing it, teenager woman. And this is a really interesting time because most women or most teens will not have what we would consider a regular cycle. And that's totally normal. So as your body is adjusting to making hormones and to starting to have that cycle or that process taking place in the body, it can take a little bit longer. So where we're able to kind of have that preparation of an egg to be released for ovulation like a champion, because we've been cycling for what, decades now, teenagers don't have that, right? And they don't have as robust levels of hormones, generally speaking, as many of us do. And so it can take them a little bit longer to have ovulation. And as we know, ovulation is the main event of a cycle. And if we are not ovulating, it is unlikely we will have a bleed. It's possible, but ovulation is kind of what brings about the bleed. So it's normal to have longer cycles. So from a parent perspective, this is really important to understand that this time can be a little different and look abnormal. And it's good to help your teenager support healthy cycles, but it's also important to allow this process to happen. And something that I see a lot with women in their 20s and 30s that I work with is they've been on birth control since maybe the first or second or third cycle they had because it was irregular. And so they go to the doctor, oh, my cycles are so long, they're irregular. What does the doctor do? Put them on birth control. And many of these women have never actually had a normal cycle or don't know how long their cycle is, or if they're even able to ovulate. And this can be problematic if, you know, somebody wants to have kids and they don't know if they've ever in their life had an ovulatory cycle. Ovulation is also like making a little deposit in our health bank as a female. It has lots of neuroprotective qualities. It helps with our metabolism, bone health. And so it's really important to allow your teens to go through this process and help support them. And, you know, I'm not fully against birth control. There are some situations where it can be really helpful, but it's also important to understand that it's normal to have irregular cycles at this time. And we will talk about what's abnormal a little bit later on, but that's a really big highlight star underline because so many teenagers are being put on even IUDs nowadays at such a young age. And it really doesn't give their body a chance to go through this natural process of having a cycle.
Yeah, well, I remember we were talking when we were doing this a little bit earlier, but I mean, I remember I got my first period and then I didn't get it for like 2 months after, right? And so, I mean, I was on the birth control at a young age too. And I think when I think back, I'm like, oh my God, that was just really like allowing my body that chance, because it's not all of a sudden your hormones are all in check, get your cycle and everything, like it makes sense, right? It's going to take a while for your body to kind of have all the hormones in flow and have your progesterone act like at the right level and have your estrogen at the right level to make sure that you're getting those cycles on a consistent, 21 day or whatever it is cycle. So.
And it's also normal to have heavier bleeds and periods. So one of progesterone's main roles, and again, we need to be ovulating to make enough progesterone, is to help hold the uterine lining in place. And it can actually slow down estrogen's growth of the lining. So the sex hormone estrogen helps to build up the uterine lining. So if you have more estrogen and your uterine lining is thicker, typically you would have a heavier bleed. And we have progesterone, which kind of helps to counteract that. But when teenagers are younger, they don't necessarily have enough progesterone to counter the effects of estrogen as it's increasing. So it's both normal and common to have heavier bleeds in the first few bleeds. And this is also important to understand what's normal and what isn't, right? When is it a problem? When should I take my teen to see someone? When should I reach out? And what part of this is actually just part of the experience? And they should lighten up as we go. There are some changes you could make with nutrition and using some supports, which we'll talk about later. But again, long cycles are normal within the first few years of bleeding, as well as heavier periods.
So what is abnormal? Heavy periods lasting more than 8 days, right? I think that's no matter what age you are, if you're having heavy periods for lasting longer than 8 days, you might want to really kind of go check things out, make sure things are normal or things are on the right track. Consistent missing periods after you've started being regular. Extreme period pain. So it's not, normal to be in intense pain during your period. So really looking at that if you're in intense pain. And it'd be really good to get those all checked out too, because you could have such issues as amenorrhea, PCOS, or insulin and thyroid related issues. So some of the causes, when we look over here, oops, sorry about that. I went too fast. Some of the causes of irregular cycles, fluctuating hormones, as we just talked about, medications, major weight gain or major weight loss, excessive exercise, or even lack of not moving, exercise. We need to make sure we're moving our bodies, poor nutrition, drug use, stress, and then eating disorders as well.
I will also add healthy body weight or excess adipose tissue. I know this is kind of like, a touchy subject to talk about, but it is important to know that adipose tissue, or AKA your fat cells, they can actually produce estrogen. So if we have too many fat cells, we are producing too much estrogen for our body, and it does become an organ that actually is producing hormones. And so it's also important to look at, I would never talk to my teenage daughter and be like, you need to lose weight, but it is something to instill healthy habits that would support a healthy body weight. Healthy body weight does look different on different people, but it's also important, to talk to our teens about regular exercise, whatever that looks like for them, and not from like, a diet culture perspective of, I think you're overweight and your hormones are messed up, but like, we do want to show healthy habits, right? And moving your body and eating in a way that supports our best health is really important to instill as a teenager. I remember when I was a teenager at my high school, they had like poutine in the cafeteria, and my friends and I all thought it was so awesome to have poutine. Going to 7-Eleven, which was just down the street when we were old enough to go out on our lunch break and buying like Slurpees and candies. I was like, dear Lord, no wonder I was suffering with acne back then.
No kidding, right? No, it really is important. I think also from a parent perspective, if you are somebody who is who has maybe struggled with weight, really looking at a way in which you can empower your teen to have a different context with that too. And so in that, by eating healthy, moving your body, it's not about necessarily losing the weight, it's about being your best self. And in being your best self, then you're also going to be your healthier best self, or healthiest best self, right? So I think it's such an important time to really have the conversations, or to lead by example as a parent, so yeah, I definitely have to. we're pretty good around our house. Like Monday to Friday, we tend to eat really, clean, and then clean. I want to say it like that. Pretty healthy, consistent meals because we have a schedule. And then weekends, if we want to have, like, I have a candy station. If we want to have some, we have a little bit of candy. There's a little bit more of a relaxed attitude with it, but it's not candy station every day, all day. Although sometimes I think she tries to sneak it.
Okay, symptoms of imbalances in teens. Now, this is important again to understand like what's normal and what could be abnormal with just changes, or your daughter or friend, whatever, getting a menstrual cycle. So periods that last longer than a week. So this would be like heavy bleeding that's again lasting for longer than 7 days or 8 days. Now, I will preface that there could be some days of spotting that typically happen before a period starts. That is usually just due to either low progesterone or what we call like leftover progesterone from the last cycle. So it's just shedding. So we want to mark it from the day of your first full day of bleeding, or like heavier day of bleeding. That would be day 1, and then seeing if it lasts longer than a week. You can also monitor your daughter's, or I keep saying daughter, most people on here, your own or your daughter's symptoms
young person, to be a young person with a vagina, because that would be the
yeah, or just like teenagers might be watching this with their parents.
Yeah, exactly.
whatever the case. You also want to monitor for symptoms of excess blood loss. So fatigue, pale skin, feeling like you need to lay down, getting really dizzy. All of those would also show that they could be bleeding a little bit too much for their body, because again, everything is different. So heavy menstrual bleeding, which would require a pad or tampon change every 2 to 3 hours, like soaked through, potentially soaking through like pants or underwear or whatever they're using. Severe cramping, having a little bit of cramping is normal when you're first getting your period. It should dissipate. Ideally, like a healthy period has no cramping at all, maybe just a little bit of like sensation, depending on how sensitive the person is. But we don't want to have severe cramping. For girls, hair growth on the chin or the lower belly, facial hair growth, this can be a sign of excess androgens, so hormones like testosterone, and it is a huge marker for something called PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And this doesn't mean you have to have cystic ovaries, which is a common misconception. And this is actually largely a metabolic issue, which can cause issues with regular periods, weight gain later on, and also is a huge contributor to infertility, one of the most common imbalances leading to infertility. So these are things that we want to look for at a young age and start to support. PCOS can be reversed, especially if it's caught at a young age, supporting just overall hormone balance and estrogen detoxification. So important to look for these markers. Unexplained weight gain is a really big one. As they start to go through puberty, again, can be signs of hormone imbalances, or maybe issues with their body's actual detoxification or their ability to utilize some of their nutrition. Hair loss on the head, extreme fatigue, dry skin, puffy or rounded face, changes in heart rate. So changes in heart rate could look like I have a couple of clients where they're sitting on the couch and they tell me their heart rate is 120. So this is like me when I'm jogging heart rate. So and how you would measure that in a teen, obviously they're probably not wearing heart rate monitors, is if you have them saying like, oh, I feel really out of breath, or they might describe it as like anxiety, or you might be able to see it in your teenager, right? Getting anxious. Because sometimes, especially if there's not the emotional intelligence, they might not be able to differentiate between something like anxiety and high heart rate, because they can manifest as similar symptoms. So most mothers, if you're listening to this, can probably tell when your kid's a little bit anxious or worked up. So you're also looking for markers like that. Extreme mood swings, depression, and anxiety. Teenagers are going to have some mood swing. We're talking extremes here, and to the point where you feel like these are probably interfering with their ability to, be a teenager and be social. Obviously, as a mother, I remember I was not super kind to my mother all of the time when I was younger, but we're talking about, emotional issues that are actually causing them to not be able to interact in their teenage world as they normally would be. And then increased sensitivity to heat or cold.
So supports for teen hormones. So changing the conversation. We were talking about this when Michaela first got her period. I was super excited. I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Your body's going to do amazing things. We had this whole conversation about it. I was so excited. I'm like, welcome, yay. My mom called. She was like, yay, welcome. We're all like, it's a great, happy time. And I was talking to my girlfriend and telling her how I was so happy for Michaela and, welcoming her into being a woman. And she said, well, I guess I didn't handle that right with my daughter, because when her daughter got her cycle, she's like, welcome to hell. Like, oh my God, no, we really need to change the conversation around this. And we need to have young women understand how amazing this is. Like, we have the ability to create life. Like, it's pretty outstanding. So we really need to look at this as a wonderful thing, not necessarily a curse, right? So we want to look at more of a celebration. So this is really a component of the thoughts you think, instead of looking at it as a negative, looking at it as a positive. So, and the more knowledge, like tonight's conversation, that we can give our daughters and teenagers, the better they are going to be to take care of themselves. I mean, if I would have known like half of this stuff as a teenager, I think physically, I know my health condition when I, 10 years ago or so, when I kind of hit ahead with everything, it would have been way different. I would have been able to handle things differently. And really normalizing conversations about our body, because it can create less stress for them. They can come and talk to us about it. They know they have a trusted ally in us. They know that if there is something going on that's, doesn't seem right, or they have really heavy bleeds, they can come talk to you and there's not an embarrassment about it. And I think that's something a lot of mothers I talk to have really started doing with their daughters, and even their young boys too, right? Really opening up the dialogue between them, and then starting education early, like we're doing tonight. So really being able to empower them with conversation, understanding their bodies, understanding estrogen, understanding progesterone, understanding how this is a balance to get all this together. So
And it's important to also talk about like what is, a healthy and normal cycle.
Yeah.
Because for a teenager, their world is so small, right? Like they have perspective, but they don't have adult perspective. They're probably not sitting like me or reading about periods online or like researching this.
Oh, what? Really?
Maybe they talk about it with their friends, maybe they don't. So whatever they're experiencing is normal to them. And
Yeah.
they might not realize that what they're experiencing is abnormal, right? How many women do I talk to in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s? What? I didn't know you weren't supposed to have cramps when you have your period. I'm like, and how long have these women been cycling, right? It's insane how many of us believe that they have to be so problematic and that it's an imperative that they are like painful, heavy, taking up your half of your month with BS essentially. And so opening up these conversations allows, teenagers to be like, oh, I don't have to feel like this. Or when something does change or is off, they're like, oh, that's actually different and that could be problematic and I'm going to note it. And this is how we prevent these from developing into bigger issues, right? Infertility rates are higher than ever. Fertility rates are down, I think 50% in the past 40 years. And so if we can start to teach our teenagers and our daughters and our children very young how to preserve their fertility, because this is essentially what taking care of your hormones is, right? We're preserving our life essence and our fertility. We're going to have a way better chance later in life than somebody who's learning in their 30s. Oh, I didn't even know I wasn't ovulating this whole time until I tried to have children. So really, really important to bring up the conversation early. And my favorite thing to talk about is nutrition. So I might be a little biased in saying that arguably this is one of the most important pieces of the pie. What we eat quite literally becomes us. What we eat sends a message to our body. It is sending signals to our hormones. We are using the food to create our hormones. The food that we eat can also increase inflammation, decrease inflammation, give our body nutrition, give our body toxins that we have to excrete. So really important to look at what we're putting into our body, because at some place it's going either in or out, whether that's through the skin, acne, whether that's through like your feces, whether that's digestive issues, whether that's getting stagnated in your body. So it's really important to look at the quality of the food that we're eating. And it can be hard with teenagers, right? Because you send them off to school, you don't know, their friends are all eating chips, they go to sleepovers, they're eating Lord knows what. So we do want to instill healthy habits without being, like a helicopter parent. Like, hey, I just wanted to phone and let you know that I don't want my daughter eating this, that, and the other thing at your house. But we can teach them about like food's effect, right? So when we eat these kind of foods, notice how you feel, like open up a conversation. Oh, do you notice when you eat this? Like, how do you feel after? Open-ended questions. Do you have more energy? Oh, when we eat these things, it could help with your skin, right? And that's what we want to work on. So let's try this out for a little bit of time. If it's not really working, we can always make a shift. So as a teenager or communicating, it can be difficult to hear from your mom, eat this, don't eat this. So I know when my mom used to tell me that, I'm like, listen, I know everything and I don't really need anyone to tell me anything else.
That's the thing, is we get older, we realize we know nothing. Then all of a sudden like, oh my God, I know nothing. But when we're younger, I know everything.
Yeah. So just opening up the conversation, like, here's what could happen if we try this. Are you open to trying this? How do you feel? Do you notice any difference? So we really want to put the onus or empower them to feel like they're making their own choices, and then they learn what feels good for their body, right? And this is, again, just helping them develop a better relationship with food and their body. Like, oh, I noticed when I eat these things, actually my period was less painful because you kind of guided them towards that realization versus saying, eat this and then this will happen. I also never talk to my clients like that. Yeah. I say usually like, here, try this out. And if you don't feel good, we can scrap it and do something else. And they're like, okay, even if they don't want to, they're like, I guess I could try. So it's important to also bring up the discussion in a very encouraging way for people.
One of the things I say to Mikkel when I notice if she has any acne, one of the first questions I ask her too, I'm like, what's your food been like? And she knows. She'll be like, well, she knows if she's had lots of sugar. And then I also ask her, did you drink lots of water? And so then immediately you'll see her with like 2 of these, and I'll find like 4 of them in her bedroom. And it does make a difference. I noticed that when she's drinking more water, her skin looks better, but she also knows, I haven't eaten that well. So it's not just, well, it's not my fault. It's like, no, what you eat. So let's pay attention to what you're eating. So.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of people will say like, I have acne, or I used to say like, I have eczema. Well, now I don't, because I learned how to change that. Right. So it's also important to open up the discussion of like, hey, here's something that we can work on, and it's possible that this could get better. Like it's possible we can improve on this. So foods we want to increase more of, we'll talk a little bit about in the coming slides. I would say just as potentially, if not more important than the foods you are eating, is foods that are triggering for you as an individual. The ones I've listed here, common triggers: gluten, processed and added sugar is a huge one for acne, artificial sweeteners. These are kind of, there's a lot of debate about them. Some studies are done in mice, but if somebody is really struggling, I always suggest err on the side of caution and take things out that could be harmful, and then see if you add them back in and nothing changes, feel free, but it's important to talk about these. Highly processed foods. So these are things that have a whole bunch of like binders, fillers, stabilizers, things to make it stay on the shelf for a really long time. Your body has to process all of those foods, and some of them are, made in a lab. So your body might not recognize it as a food, goes through your liver, can also impact your liver's ability then to process hormones. We can have excess hormone issues. Excess estrogen can come out in your skin, acne, all the good stuff. Dairy is a really big one for people. Unfortunately, it's very tasty, but especially at that young age where, again, estrogen is high, many of the conventional dairy products that we are buying can increase estrogen in the body or have an effect on estrogen, unless we're buying like grass-fed, organic, which, many people are not able to access that with the resources they have. If you can, still, even some people are sensitive. So these are things to look at, and how we would implement that like in a practical way with a teenager is just asking, hey, would you be open, when we're making dinners, or if you're making dinners for them, you can just make dinners without these things. Obviously, they're going to be taking in some of these things when they're maybe out with their friends. You don't want to completely be like, no, I'm putting you on this diet for your skin. We just want to do the best we can, within our control. Maybe open up the discussion of, like you said, how has your nutrition been when their skin is off? Oh, I have been eating a lot of sugar. Okay, so maybe we could try cutting back. And then if their skin improves, hey, your skin really improved. Did you make any changes? So again, you want them to be coming to these realizations themselves, and we're just guiding them to make better decisions. We don't want to be in that, like, they hear enough from their teachers all day at school. They don't want their mom to be like, don't eat this because da da da. So we always want to be encouraging them to understand these things in their own body.
To make empowered choices, right? So hormone and skin support nutrients. So some of the things you can, prebiotics, some of the things you can be taking as well are encouraging. And some of the examples of that would be apples to the skin, asparagus, you've got onion, garlic, chicory, artichoke leeks. We cook with a lot of garlic in our household. So that's a really good prebiotic as well. This is going to feed the good gut bacteria. So you got to think this is the food for the good bugs. This is what you want to do. It also enhances stool consistency and supports the gut lining. Then you have fermented food. So you got the sauerkraut, the kefir, the kimchi, the miso, all those different fermented foods you could be incorporating. And that actually contain live bacteria, which actually support the healthy microbiome. Then we have intestinal integrity support, right? So with that, we got bone broth and L-glutamine as well. Prairie Naturals has a really great bone broth with there's no salt in it, added salt. So it actually has a really nice taste to it. L-glutamine is excellent for your intestinal health. And you can also take it for muscle recovery too. So it's great if you have really active kids, there's no flavor to it. You can just pour it into a smoothie. So glutamine is really important, and that's going to help repair and heal the intestine walls and the lining. And so it becomes more permeable, which can become more permeable due to inflammation. If you are having some of those foods she was talking about before, like the dairy and whatnot, if your body's reacting to it, this would actually help support that too. Then omega-3s. So omega-3s, salmon, cod liver oil. Not sure if you're going to get your kids to drink cod liver oil as much, walnuts, flax, but we try to have, what?
Mike will be eating raw liver straight out of the womb. I'll be like, honey, never mind breast milk. Mom's got something better for you.
Some cod liver oil. But Michaela loves, we do salmon once a week. We always have fish in our house. Once a week we have salmon. So really looking at those omega-3s and finding, if you want to find a good omega-3 6 is what you can get probably. So you can get one of those, a really good fish oil. They've got lots of them in the market right now with flavors. So if your kid's really adverse to that, there's some really tasty ones out there. And that also helps with inflammation. Then antioxidants. So looking at those really rich polyphenol, like the rich reds and the dark greens, those, we got like kale and berries and pomegranate and cherries, and now it's coming into the season. So really making sure you're getting a lot of those antioxidants, right? And that's going to help protect the cells, polyphenols, as well as I kind of mentioned before. So those, the berries and the very rich colors. This week get your polyphenol. You can get a greens or you can get a red, so you can start including into their smoothies in the morning time, something like that. Also high quality olive oil too, and spices. Oops, sorry. And that's also helps reduce inflammation. So we're looking at a common theme here with inflammation as well. And then vitamin A rich foods. So that helps with skin. Egg yolks, again, cod liver oil, and those orange colored vegetables too. And then saffron. Saffron helps with mood stability. So those are some different nutrients you can really look that are going to support the skin and also support your hormones too. Want to say anything? Okay.
We're continuing.
All right, there we go.
Okay, so essentially these are also some more foods that just have nutrient density purposes. So some of these are a little bit of a crossover, what we talked about before. So allium vegetables, those are also things like garlic and onion. Grass-fed meats and whole grains are really great. They are very rich in B vitamins, vitamin C rich foods, fiber, cruciferous vegetables. So essentially just like a really mineral dense diet. What does that look like if we take this in a really broad perspective? Getting a lot of different types of fruits. Dark color is great. Citrus fruits are really great. Tropical fruits are great. I love fruit. Like, I think it is one of the most underrated health foods on the planet. Gets a little demonized, but it is so, so great for just mineral support. High quality meat, protein is really important also for mood stability. We need amino acids to make our neurotransmitters. So I've seen, like, in practice, a lot of women under eating protein who eat protein and they get way more relaxed and their anxiety is way less. And then obviously a wide variety of produce and different vegetables, and then including lots of spices. You know, spices are so underrated. I call it kitchen medicine.
Oh, underrated.
Yeah, it's so beautiful how when I was studying like herbal medicine at school, it's like a lot of the things you have in your kitchen, it's like, oh, I could just throw some of that on my meal and like it has amazing benefits. So focusing on mainly whole foods and then really trying to just bring in a lot of nutrition and mineral density into your lovely teenagers' nutrition.
I know sometimes, I mean, I'm a single parent, so I know at times it can get really hard. And I know there's some, like, to have meals, like I'm on the road all day working and then to come home and try to make some creative meal. And I know that can be really challenging at times. And then sometimes I'll make it and she'll be like, I don't like it. I'm like, what? I just made it. So one of the things I usually do is we have ground bison. We always have ground bison in the fridge. I also have ground chicken in the fridge. So she actually wanted to just take something and use some of the protein. So I have it usually cooked up, but there's also these great food companies that will actually deliver some of the stuff, right? So you can do that a couple times a week where you have an opportunity to make a meal together, but really choosing some of these things we're talking about while you're doing it. What are some of those meals called? You know, you order the meal and then you make it.
Like HelloFresh?
Yeah, like HelloFresh, right? So you can do something along those lines and then add some more vegetables to it if you're really struggling to think of what to do at certain nights. And then it also will give you a chance to cook together, right? So that's another thing too that is, I think, really important, is spending time, because I know that, you know, she comes home and goes in her room. You've heard her kind of go back and forth a couple of times, goes in her room, and I have to basically beg her to come out and hang out with me and watch Grey's Anatomy because she's like, I'm on the phone. So really that will give you a chance not only to eat a really good meal together, but make it together too. So liver support. Liver is our mother organ. We really want to make sure we're supporting our liver. And it's responsible for, getting rid of those excess hormones in the body. And that's where we can really have those imbalances. And we see those all the way through our lives, right? So you see that a lot of time with women in older ages who haven't supported their liver, and they have found they have, they're estrogen dominant and whatnot. So as the body adjusts to increase hormones, it can be really helpful to obviously support the liver. So looking at fiber-rich foods, right? So those with the bitter taste, like cruciferous vegetables, you've got your broccoli, your cauliflower, your kale, your Brussels sprouts. And this also increases the liver's natural detoxification enzymes. So it protects it from damage and also improves blood levels of the liver enzymes. So certain supplements you can look at to support the liver for yourself and also for your daughter would be NAC, glutathione, quercetin, resveratrol. And we have a little bit more at the end. We're going to talk about a little bit of supplements. Castor oil packs, you put those, you believe it right on the liver area, correct? Yeah, you put a castor oil pack on the liver, and that will also help too. And then reducing exposure to toxins and endocrine disrupting chemicals, looking at the makeup that they're using, trying to make more natural selections. When I know sometimes it's hard, my daughter loves Sephora. So even at Sephora, they've got some natural ones too, but looking at where you can direct and where, their creams, their shampoos, the bounce sheets that you're using, try to have no scent, really looking at options in which things can be all the stuff that you can use, and even the stuff that you're kind of in charge of buying from a household perspective can be fragrance free, that don't have the parabens, that don't have the toxins in it. So did you want to address the castor oil pack? How do you, with the castor oil pack, you can make it yourself, correct?
I love castor oil packs. If any of my clients are watching this, they probably know. I get lots of people on the castor oil packs.
I never tried it myself, but I know that.
So you can get the castor oil. I typically recommend people also get the wrap because it will stain your clothes if you don't. And you literally just like heat it up, put some castor oil on, and just sit with it on for like 45 minutes. Really great. Liver is so underrated. I know we keep mentioning acne because I would say, like, from just people reaching out to me or discussing, a lot of teenagers struggle with acne. The amount of success I've seen in clients who have lots of acne with supporting their liver is like,
I can imagine.
Yeah. Insane. So liver support is really, really huge.
And eating liver too, right? A lot of people don't want to eat liver, but I know you're a big.
I have never suggested anyone have their children or their teenagers eat liver yet. There's a first for everything.
Exactly. Right.
Okay, digestive health. This is also one of my favorite things in the whole world to talk about. So digestive health is a huge, huge topic, and there are so many different processes that happen in digestion. So I laugh my ASSS off when someone's like, oh, just take a probiotic, or you see like fitness influencers and they're like, this greens powder healed my IBS. And I'm just like,
I can't take it.
Yeah, I cannot even deal. So eating a whole food diet is one of the best things you can do for your digestive health, specifically when we look at protein variety and rotation. So one of the most beneficial things we can do for our digestive health in a healthy person is to rotate your produce and have about 30 to 40 different kinds of fruits and vegetables a week. Whenever I say that to clients, they're like, oh my God. And then I have them count, and most people are around like, 20. It's not a huge jump up, but essentially we don't want to be having like green beans and broccoli. I'm sure your teenagers probably aren't in that stage, hopefully yet, but I know I went through that stage. And it's really important to be able to rotate. Bone broth is such a powerful healing food. It is like one of my favorite foods ever. So many therapeutic benefits, so mineral rich, can really help with skin, overall digestive health. You can buy it powdered. So Prairie Naturals has a really great one. You can also make your own. Many local butcher shops by you will have it as well. Fiber is really important. Fermented foods you can also include. So if your kiddo is not really stoked on the taste of something like sauerkraut, and they're okay with spicy foods, you can like mix a little kimchi in with some of the meats that they're eating, or most people tend to be kind of okay with kombucha. You can also buy something called kefir water, and you can use it in their smoothies. They won't be able to taste it. So there's a few ways you can include it. If your teenager's not going to sit like me and just eat a couple tablespoons of sauerkraut. And then, of course, eliminating inflammatory foods from your diet. So a lot of the processed foods that we buy have specific ingredients like polysorbate 80, and these can actually be really disruptive to your intestinal lining and your overall digestive health. So it's important to also look at what we are eating that could be compromising it or underlying inflammation. And then supporting digestive resources and absorption of nutrients. Chew your food. Most of us, me, calling myself out, do not chew our food enough, and we eat in this really like spastic almost kind of state. I sometimes catch myself if I'm like scrolling and eating, and I'm like, why are you so aggressive when you're eating? I'm like chewing my food like a spaz, and I have to stop and be like, are you good, hun? Like, you okay? Yeah, so I do this too. Eating undistracted is really helpful for digestion. And then you can use things like probiotic rich foods, avoiding pesticides, and just diversifying your produce.
I think what they say, you should chew your food. I think it's like 35 times.
Yeah, it's like 30 to 40 times.
I mean, I've tried it. That's really hard to do.
I'll be lucky to chew a meal 30 to 40 times.
The same way. Or like I'm in the car, if I'm working, I'm driving, and I'll be eating, but I literally, sometimes I'm like, did I even chew that? Like what even,
right?
I swear to God, she's like, so movement. Yes, movement, big one for not only us as adults, but big one for teens. It's really important for physical activity. And it's also important to create these habits. Like we're talking about healthy habits, not only for yourself, but also starting to really give these healthy habits to your teenagers. So when they go into adulthood, movement is a really big part of their day-to-day activity. That's something they do every day. And I think also having a conversation that even walking, Like this morning, I didn't actually go to the gym. I went for like an hour long walk all the way down to Granville Island, all the way back up. That is movement. Movement is movement. So we can get out of this whole idea it must be running on a treadmill or stuff like that, but really getting them to have movement every day. It's a great outlet for stress. I know that that's where I like to do it, helping regulate emotions. It helps balance estrogen levels. That's one of the ways you actually can secrete estrogen as well, is through your sweat. So making sure that you're sweating every day. And it helps teens develop a better relationship with their body. I know we have a gym in our building and Michaela likes to go there, and she'll go in for like half an hour and she'll do the treadmill for a little bit and she'll do some weights. And she also goes to the gym at school. So it's become something that she's really brought into her day to day. It also helps release endorphins and also brain calming chemicals and help can mitigate period cramps. And if your daughter doesn't want to go to the gym with you, like Michaela won't go with me anymore, but she'll go by herself. Or if she just is not comfortable going to the gym, it's so important with sports. And Michaela plays volleyball, but finding something your child likes to do sport wise, I think from their little, and really encouraging that as part of their day-to-day movement is really, really important.
Stress management. This is very overlooked. And I think that a lot of people kind of roll their eyes about this. We actually recorded a podcast today all about acne, and she is a beautiful practitioner. And she was saying she had a client come in and she touched their face because she does like facials as part of it. And they were so hot, like their skin was hot. They had these like acne lesions that looked like hot and inflamed. And at the end of the facial, she was like, you need to find where in your life you're so stressed and angry and let it go. Like your anger is like bubbling from the inside out. 6 weeks later, this girl come back, clear skin. And she was like, you're so right. Like I needed to let go of this anger that I've been holding on to for like 10 years. Wow. And she was even really amazed. And, you know, people will often say like, oh, I have stress breakouts, you know, especially like we work with some really high level, like CEO executive types, and they experience lots of breakouts due to stress, and you can definitely see it. And stress is also so important just in the general context of hormone health, because if we have too much cortisol, which is our stress hormone, we use a lot of the resources that we need to make cortisol to also make things like progesterone. So if all of our resources are going towards cortisol, we're going to have low progesterone, which is going to increase and exacerbate our excess estrogen symptoms. If you remember back at the beginning when we talked about how many teenagers already have lower progesterone, which is why their cycles are so long, this can make things worse. And I'm glad, I hate to say this, that I grew up when I did, even on the cusp, because I mentor a teenager, or some of the teenagers I've spoken to, holy SHIT, it is a hard time to be a teenager. Social media, seeing all these people online doing all these things, these teenagers are doing stuff that I'm like, whoa, I didn't even get exposed to that or know what that was till I was 20.
And just the cattiness at school, right? There's a lot of stuff going on drama wise that, you know, I know Michaela's experience too, that they're not going to really share with you. And that's the other thing too. So keeping a lot of that stuff in, and they don't really have an outlet to talk to, right?
Yeah. So teaching them about stress management is really important. And, you know, especially because they're dealing with all of these like fluctuations of emotions that they don't have the emotional intelligence to be able to understand. They just kind of lash out, right? They're in that experience. They can't really separate themselves. It's important to teach them. And also, you know, like Aeryon said, like give them, like book them counseling sessions, right? Like give them a chance, like, hey, I did this for you, go try it out. Again, if you don't like it, you can stop. That's like one of my favorite lines ever, because most people will be willing to try. Open up quality time to spend with them. Cognitive behavioral therapy, I know that you love this one. Journaling, nature walks, or even just giving them some them time. Like, hey, what do you love doing? Maybe on Fridays we could do this. Or the teenager that I work with, her and her mom, like, will go for manicures, or they'll go to the movies together. And it's really nice because it's important to spend time with them and also teach them and give them some strategies for stress management, or teach them about like, what does it feel like when you're stressed? Because they might not even be able to realize I'm stressed, right? They're just in this outward experience of like heightened emotions. They don't know what to do with it. So like, hey, here's some of the things that mom does that I really like that helps me with my stress, or here's some things that you might try that could help. Are you open to trying them out, right? So give them some strategies, because I doubt, you know, a 12, 13-year-old is going to be like, maybe I should go to counseling. Maybe I should journal about my thoughts. So we kind of need to like give them these things so that they have some strategies to try out.
Yeah, and there is really are great counselors as well as school level. Like that's one of the things I've done for Michaela. You mentioned I have her booked at the high school counselor. So she has somebody to go in. She's a really kind of cool young girl. Michaela can go in because there's a lot of stuff she's not going to want to tell me. Right. So she has somebody, and if she doesn't want to talk about it, that's fine. But once a week, she can go in, have half an hour and kind of vent. And then if there is stuff that shows up for her, then there's somebody there as an adult who has tools and strategies that can help her. Because if she doesn't want to come to me, there's stuff I'll find out weeks later. I'm like, why didn't you tell me this? She's like, well, so I think it's really great to be able to equip them with that. And our school systems here, at least up in Canada, we have some really great counselors who really care. All right, support supplements. This is my jam. I wanted to, before I touch base on the product I'm going to talk about, one of the things I really want to say is it's important that we do all of these other things first. To me, it's really important to look at nutrition first, not just jump on a bandwagon and go buy a support supplement, especially when you're dealing with your teenagers, but really looking at ways, looking at the food, looking, are they going to the bathroom regularly, looking, are they doing movement, all these things that Sarah and I have talked about today. And then when you're kind of at a point, then you can start looking at adding like a support supplement. So the support supplement that I recommend for teens would be Reset. So Reset is really for the younger girls, I like to say, right? It's really great for hormonal acne. That's one of the great things with it, because it does have the liver support in there. So it's also key for estrogen detoxification. It helps with progesterone production, supports immune health. It also helps with PMS. And we do have those B vitamins in there. And as I said, helps with hormonal skin acne. So the ingredients in ingredients in Reset, we have chaste-3, and that helps increase the luteinizing hormone we were talking about earlier. So that's going to increase your progesterone levels. As we spoke, right, when you are younger and when you're starting to get your period, a lot of the time those progesterone levels are lower. So it's really helping increasing that. And that's going to help with ovulation as well. So if you're a mother who's looking at putting her daughter on birth control pill, I highly suggest giving Reset a try first, looking at for something natural if you can first, looking at all the food, looking at everything else that we've talked about tonight. But there is something you like using. Reset's a great one. Then we have resveratrol in there, so that supports stage 2 liver detoxification, is an estrogen modulator, and milk thistle. We talked about supporting the liver, so milk thistle helps support the liver. Then we've got NAC. So NAC actually helps with immune health. It also helps with gut function. You heard us mention that earlier. And then we have the B vitamins in here. So we have B6, methylated folate, which is B9, the active form, and B12 in this product. And so B6 is really great for PMS as well. So it's a very simple formula, and it's a one a day. I know with Michaela, if she had been struggling with hormonal acne or anything to do with period stuff, this is the product I would be giving her. So if there's any questions, we can open the floor up if anybody has any questions. And if not, you can always message Sarah and I online, or you can always message us on Instagram, give me our handles. And you can also sign up for the newsletter, because we do these every month. But one of the things I wanted to mention, on the front of every Aeryon Wellness bottle, we have a QR code. These QR codes lead to a 30 to 60 second video, and this really falls in line with the 5 pillars of Aeryon Wellness. But these QR codes lead to a 30 to 60 second video. All of the products have meal plans in them. All of the products have different tips and strategies to support you with whatever condition you're taking the product for. So if you do see Aeryon Wellness products, I highly recommend go up and scan it, and you can really see what it's all about, because it's not just buying a supplement. We're really trying to give you the tools and strategies to support you. So we would love you to stay connected on our newsletter. You can check out the website, Aeryon Wellness. On Instagram and Twitter, and then Facebook and YouTube. Everything is all Aeryon Wellness. We store all of these webinars on Aeryon Wellness. And then, of course, Sarah Collins Wellness. Go to her IG, follow her, and then also talk about your podcast so everybody can follow you there, or go to your website.
Right. So we have a podcast. It's called Embodied Wellness Radio. We cover all sorts of women's health topics. We're doing a series right now on digestive health. So if that sounds like something you struggle with, we're doing an entire series. I think there's like four plus podcasts in this series. We have them on acne. We have one with Aeryon on estrogen detox. So all different things in the holistic health and functional medicine space.
Yeah, no, you guys have an awesome podcast. So I think if you're not following Sarah, head over and follow Sarah, and definitely you can get the podcast on iTunes too. Is it iTunes? Or,
yeah, lots of free content on my page too every day.
Every day she has tons of stuff. And then you can follow me on my personal IG. And that's it. And then we're going to have more of these as the months go on. So you can grab them on YouTube, watch more, share with a friend. And there you go. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And as again,
Bye.
always wonderful, Sarah.
Thank you. You too.
Have a wonderful night, everybody. Let me just end up. I stopped sharing. I need to stop recording. Where's my recording? Oh, I don't want to end. Where's, oh, there we go. Stop recording. I don't want to. I'll have to cut that.